Welcome to High Scary Stories. Tonight we enter 5 true wilderness horror stories, each one a warning from the deep woods, the empty desert, the frozen dark. Stories where things don't just find you. They follow. They whisper. They wear your face. A lone elk that watches from the ridge. A drone that sees someone walking who shouldn't exist. A canyon that echoes with your own scream. A porch with something underneath, and a voice singing from beneath the ice, calling you home. These aren't just stories about isolation. They're about what waits when no one's watching. This is High Scary Stories. Let's begin. Story 1. The Whispering Elk. I took the ranger job out of necessity more than passion. After the divorce and losing my dad to a slow-moving cancer, I didn't have much holding me back in Bozeman. The solitude of Montana's high country was supposed to be medicine, something about crisp air, endless pines, and the crunch of snow under your boots that makes you feel clean again. They assigned me to a remote winter outpost in the Gallatin Range, 3 weeks on 4 days off, rotating between 2 cabins, about 20 miles apart. No radio tower out there, just a sat phone for emergencies and logbooks for everything else. It was my second winter up there when I first noticed the elk. Nothing strange at first. I'd spend my days snowshoeing out to track migration patterns, counting scat piles, noting any changes in herd movement. Elk tend to stick in groups unless spooked or sick, but this one. It always stood alone, a few hundred feet from the tree line above Basin Hollow. Every time I passed that ridge there, it was motionless. Not grazing, not watching other elk, just watching me. I chalked it up to a curious animal, or maybe one of the older bulls ousted from the group. Still, something about it felt off. Its body was too still for the cold. And its eyes, they followed me with a focus that didn't feel quite animal. A week went by, and the elk never left the ridge. Every time I hiked the Basin Hollow Trail to check for wolf prints or frozen water sources, I'd glance up and see it same spot, same posture, unmoving. I even pulled out my binoculars once, thinking maybe it was a carcass frozen upright in some freak accident. But no, it blinked. Once. Slowly. Like it knew I was watching. The air around it always seemed unusually still, too. Birds avoided that stretch of trees, and even my breath felt quieter there, like snow absorbing the sound in a way that wasn't natural. One morning I found tracks near the south-facing cabin. That wasn't too unusual. Elk will wander even alone, especially when food is scarce. But these prints didn't follow normal patterns. They circled the cabin twice in a perfect ring and stopped just 10 feet from the front door. No drag marks, no signs of hesitation, just prints in a clean arc. I followed them backward as far as I could until they simply started. No origin point, just one set of prints that began in the middle of the snow. The next night, I woke to the dogs whining. Both were rescue shepherd mixes stationed with me, trained for detection and companionship. They were curled in the corner eyes, wide tails tucked. I sat up in bed, heart thudding, and heard a whispering sound outside. Faint and breathy, not quite words, but with a rhythm like someone speaking from far away through a wall of ice. I grabbed my coat and flashlight, stepped out onto the porch. The wind cut through me instantly. I scanned the trees. Nothing, just snow falling in thick, slow flakes, the kind that silence everything. But the dogs wouldn't come near the doorway. They stayed back inside, trembling. The next day I radioed into HQ, asked if anyone else had been in the area. No one. Just me, the dogs, and whatever was out there. And then, on my next patrol, I saw it again. The elk. This time it was closer, maybe 50 yards from the trail. Same unnerving stillness. But now I could see something new. Its mouth was slightly open. and I swear to God, when the wind dipped low enough, I heard it murmur my name. I didn't tell anyone about the voice. What was I supposed to say? That an elk mouthed my name in the middle of the Montana backcountry? Instead, I kept logging tracks, temperature, snow depth, everything routine on paper. But I started changing routes. I stopped hiking past Basin Hollow, made up reasons to avoid the ridge. If something was watching me, I didn't want to feed it attention. But the thing about isolation is it feeds everything else. 2 days later, just after sundown, I heard something outside the cabin again. Not the whispering this time, something heavier. A single thud against the back wall. I grabbed my flashlight, slung my .30-06 over my shoulder, not to fire, just comfort. The dogs were alert again, ears flat, one whining low in her throat. I stepped out into the snow. The wind had died, and that silence, that unnatural quiet, had settled again. No crunch of branches, no distant howl. Just the kind of stillness that presses on your ears. I rounded the cabin. Nothing. But the snow on that side looked wrong. Like it had been disturbed and then carefully smoothed over again. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed up with the dogs, both of them curled tight against my legs, staring toward the windows. Around 3 a.m., a sound came from the tree line, not a voice, not words, but a low gurgling moan, like a deer caught in wire but slower, drawn out, too long. Then it stopped. The next morning, I checked the snow again. Another ring of tracks around the cabin, this time tighter. Only 6 feet from the door. The prints were deeper now, and closer together, almost like the elk had been dragging something. That afternoon, the wind picked up, and by nightfall, we were in a full-blown blizzard. HQ warned me via sat phone, stay put, conserve fuel, ride it out. I stocked up on water split wood, double-checked the backup generator. I wasn't afraid of the storm. I was afraid of the dark it brought with it. Somewhere around midnight, I heard the whispering again, louder this time, clearer. It came from all sides. The dogs were growling now, low and unrelenting. I stood by the front window, trying to see through the thick snow. And then, the knocking started. Soft at first, delicate. A knock at the door. I stood frozen, heart hammering in my chest. Then, a woman's voice spoke from just outside. It was her voice. "Baby, it's cold out here. Please let me in." I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the dogs. That voice didn't belong in this forest. It belonged to my ex-wife, and I hadn't heard it in nearly 2 years, not since she walked out and left me in that hollow apartment with silence for company. The voice came again. "Let me in, please. Just for a minute. I miss you." The dogs started barking now, loud and furious. One hurled itself at the door. Then I saw the shadow. Through the frosted glass of the top window, a massive shape moved past, tall, impossibly tall. Antlers. But not on the head, stretching out from the shoulders like someone wearing a mask, too low, too human. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The whispering started again, circling the cabin like wind. The lights flickered. I backed into the bedroom, locked the door, and waited. The knocking stopped around dawn. The dogs, exhausted, fell asleep as the sun finally broke through the storm. When I stepped outside that morning, every tree within 20 feet of the cabin had deep gouges down their trunks, like something had scraped them slowly, deliberately, with sharpened bone. I didn't tell HQ about the gouges. What would I say that something with antlers and my ex-wife's voice had been circling my cabin during the blizzard? Instead, I wrote it off in the log as wind damage, heavy storm, high gusts, probable debris. But inside, I wasn't so sure. The marks were too clean, too consistent. Same height, same depth, each one raked down the trunks like tally mark. I didn't sleep that night. The storm had passed, but something colder had settled in me. I stayed up by the window, rifle across my lap, both dogs asleep at my feet, twitching in dreams. Around 2 a.m., I saw it again. The elk stood just beyond the tree line, half shrouded in moonlight, unmoving as always. But this time, it faced the cabin squarely. No grazing, no motion. Just there as if it had always been. I grabbed my binoculars. Even in the dark, I could make out the antlers, massive, uneven, jagged like tree limbs. But what froze my blood wasn't the size or shape. It was the face. It wasn't right. It wasn't an elk's face. It was flatter, longer, almost human, but stretched too far, like wet paper pulled over bone. Its mouth was open slack. And its eyes were wrong. Human eyes, familiar eyes, her eyes. I dropped the binoculars, my hands shaking from fear and cold. Whether it was exhaustion or something else, I must have dozed off, I don't remember when. I woke to the dogs growling again, low and wary. Outside there was no sound, no wind, no footsteps, just that dead, suffocating silence of the forest. Until the door handle turned. It clicked once, twice. Slow testing. And then a voice, not my ex-wife this time. A child's voice. Daddy. I'm cold. Let me in. I don't have kids. I've never had kids. I grabbed the rifle, walked slowly to the door, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The dogs didn't follow this time. They stayed curled up and whining. I pulled open the door in one motion, raised the barrel, and froze. It was the elk. Only it wasn't standing on 4 legs anymore. Its back was arched, legs long and thin, like stilts balanced precariously on 2 limbs that looked more like bones than muscle. Its antlers reached wide casting shadows, like broken hands across the snow. And hanging from its mouth loosely like a puppet was a face. My face. I stumbled back, slammed the door, bolted it shut. From outside came a low rattling sound like teeth chattering but deeper, hollow, wrong. It stayed until sunrise. When I went outside later, there were no prints in the snow. But the face in the snowbank 10 feet from my porch was real. Frozen, solid, half-buried, still shaped like mine. That was the day I radioed HQ and asked to be reassigned. They told me they'd send someone up to relieve me in 48 hours. I didn't wait. I packed my gear, my dogs, and hiked 10 miles through the snow to the ranger station on foot. I never went back to Basin Hollow. But sometimes on quiet nights, when the dogs start to whine, I swear I still hear it just outside my cabin window. A whisper, saying my name. Story 2. Red lights in the orchard. I picked up the drone mapping contract because the pay was good and the work was quiet. After years of freelance GIS surveys and tech gigs that went nowhere, getting paid to fly drones over abandoned farmland felt like a win. This particular job took me to upstate New York to a dying township called Fairvale. Just a scatter of houses, a gas station, and an old Baptist church flanked by dead trees. The client was a regional developer looking to digitize old property lines before tearing down and revitalizing the area, as they put it. My assignment was simple: scan and document the remains of the Dawson Orchard, once a thriving apple farm. Now just a stretch of rotting trees and caved-in sheds. Locals didn't say much about it, except for one old guy at the diner who warned me, just don't be flying after sundown. Some things don't like being seen. I thought it was just small-town superstition. The orchard itself looked harmless enough. Rows of skeletal apple trees, most of them leafless, even in early spring. Everything coated in a soft layer of moss and silence. But I did notice something odd right away. The trees had grown crooked, twisting slightly toward the center of the orchard, like they'd been reaching for something. I chalked it up to wind patterns, maybe soil erosion. Still, the place had a weight to it, a stillness I didn't like. And on the second day, as my drone hovered near the orchard center, the camera feed flickered just once, and something blinked red behind the trees. At first, I thought it was a sensor glitch. Red light artifacts aren't unheard of when you're flying in low light lens flare sun reflection, even insects catching the infrared. I noted the time, marked the coordinates, and planned to review the footage that night. But when I scrubbed through the video frame by frame, the light didn't behave like a flare. It didn't pulse or smear. It blinked. Once. Deliberately. Two glowing red orbs behind the twisted trees, stationary, perfectly aligned, like a pair of eyes staring directly at the drone. Then they vanished. I adjusted the contrast, the saturation, everything. Still the same result. I even showed the clip to my girlfriend back home, who was used to weird footage from my gigs. She stared for a second and said, "Are those headlights?" I didn't answer. There was no road in that direction, just dense orchard and a rusted-out irrigation trench. The next morning, I flew the drone along the same path, curious. The feed remained stable, but about 3 minutes in, the drone started drifting. It didn't lose GPS, didn't give me any signal drop. It just began to tilt, like something was pushing back. Then the camera feed cut out. I hiked in to retrieve it. The air was still unnaturally so. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves, just silence thick enough that my own breathing felt loud. I found the drone propped up against a broken apple crate, completely intact. No crash, no impact damage. Just sitting there like someone had placed it down carefully. That's when I heard it, my own voice. Faint, muffled, but undeniably me. It was coming from deeper in the orchard. I froze. The voice repeated something I'd said earlier that day when testing the drone's stabilize. Shift forward 6 feet. Begin pan. The exact same cadence, like an echo from the speaker. But I hadn't brought any audio equipment. The drone didn't have a speaker function. I backed out slowly, never turning my back on the trees. Back at the motel, I ran diagnostics, nothing was wrong. But that night, the drone feed glitched again. It turned itself on at 2:37 a.m. and sent a short clip to my cloud storage. In the video, someone was walking through the orchard. Same clothes as me, same backpack. But I never left the room. The next morning, I drove out to the orchard before sunrise. I didn't tell anyone I was going, just left a note in my motel room and packed extra batteries, thermal gear, and a flashlight. The air was sharp with frost despite the season, and a low mist clung to the ground like it was trying to hold something in. I told myself I was going to find answers, but deep down, I think I already knew what I was walking into. I just didn't want to let it keep happening without at least seeing it for myself. I stepped between the crooked rows of trees, drone controller in hand, using the live feed as my eyes. I kept my real ones on the shadows. The silence was thicker this time, oppressive, like I had passed through some membrane that filtered out the rest of the world. About 100 yards in my screen flickered, just once. I paused. Then something appeared on the drone feed. Someone walking about 20 feet ahead, just barely visible between the branches. They were wearing my jacket, my backpack, moving slowly, deliberately, with the same limp I developed last year from a snowmobile accident. I looked up from the screen, and there was no one there. But on the feed, the figure kept walking. It stopped at the base of a dead tree, turned slowly to face the drone. The face wasn't fully visible, more like a blurred reflection, but the shape was right. the posture, even the way the left shoulder dipped slightly lower than the right, same as mine. It raised one hand to my hand and waved at the drone. Then the feed cut. I froze. The only sound was the soft hum of the controller and the thud of my heart. I didn't want to move forward, but I couldn't just leave the drone again either. I forced myself to walk to the tree. Nothing. No one. But on the trunk, freshly carved into the bark, were 5 letters, hello. I backed away slowly, flashlight beam jittering in my shaking hands. And that's when I heard the footsteps behind me, slow, deliberate crunches in the frost-covered grass, perfectly matching mine. I turned around, and about 30 feet away, half shrouded in mist, was a figure. It looked like me. Exactly. Same build, same gear, same everything. Except its face was blank, like a wax sculpture that hadn't been finished. No eyes, no mouth, just the faintest indentations where features should have been. It didn't move, just stood there, head slightly tilted. I stumbled back, tripping over a root flashlight rolling from my grip. When I looked up again, it was closer, 15 feet. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I turned and ran, pushing through branches, ignoring the scratches on my arms. I didn't stop until I saw my car at the edge of the orchard headlights, like salvation in the gray dawn. I got in, slammed the door, and locked it. As I pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The orchard was still. Empty, except for one figure standing at the tree line, raising a hand in a slow, stiff wave. And even from that distance, I could tell it was still wearing my face. I didn't go back to the orchard after that. Not physically, anyway. For 2 days, I stayed holed up in the motel room with the blinds drawn and my phone off. I tried to convince myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, maybe even a neurological issue. I even looked up early onset schizophrenia and derealization just to give myself something rational to cling to. But none of those explanations accounted for the drone footage. Because that night, around 2:00 a.m., another file appeared in my cloud drive. No notification, no source listed. Just a clean, neatly labeled file, survey complete, MP4. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. The video began like any other smooth aerial view, gliding just above the treetops. The orchard looked peaceful, drenched in late afternoon gold light, but the drone wasn't flying any path I had programmed. It was hovering then, slowly descending into the grove. There was no sound, just the mechanical whir of blades and the soft rustle of wind in dead leaves. At the 3-minute mark, the drone turned. And that's when I saw myself. Walking down the middle row between the trees, same clothes, same gait. Except I wasn't holding a controller. My arms hung limply by my sides. I moved like a puppet being led, my steps too smooth, too slow. Someone mimicking the idea of walking rather than doing it naturally. I watched in frozen silence as the figure paused, looked up and stared into the drone. Then something horrifying happened. I smiled. Not a smirk, not confusion. A wide, deliberate smile, stretching too far, too slow. Like the face didn't quite understand how to make the expression work. And then my head tilted slightly, not toward the drone, but toward the camera watching the footage. Me. The drone climbed rapidly after that, almost as if panicked. The shot jerked skyward, spinning over the tops of trees. But for just a moment before the video cut out, the camera caught a second figure walking out from the other end of the orchard. Also me. Same clothes, same limp, same face. 2 of me. Walking in opposite directions, I shut the laptop and vomited in the sink. The next morning, I packed everything and left town. I didn't submit a report. I didn't even collect my final check. I changed my number, deleted my cloud accounts, and moved in with my cousin in Michigan for a while, just until I could sleep through the night again without seeing that smile behind my eyes. But sometimes, late at night, I dream of the orchard. Always from above, like I'm seeing it through the drone again. And in those dreams, there's always someone standing at the center of the trees, wearing my face, waving at the sky. Story 3. The Screamer in Mile 19, Old Canyon. I've been a long-distance trail runner for most of my adult life. There's something sacred about pushing your body until the noise in your head quiets, and the only thing left is breath, dirt, and rhythm. I usually train in populated areas, state parks, mountain loops near town. But after moving to southern Utah for work last year, I started exploring more remote trails. One of them was Mile 19 Canyon. Locals didn't talk about it much. It wasn't marked on the visitor trail maps, but I found it on an old runner's forum. A forgotten slot canyon tucked between two bluffs 20 miles out past Route 24. Rugged, beautiful, nearly untouched. The first time I ran it, I was stunned by how quiet it was. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my footfalls echoing off red sandstone. I made Mile 19 part of my weekend ritual. The trail wound through brush sand and shale, stretching about 6 miles in before circling back. It was brutal on the legs, but perfect for endurance work. I started logging faster splits every time I went. Then during one late afternoon run, I heard something strange about 3 miles in. It came from somewhere up ahead, hidden behind the canyon curve. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a coyote or hawk. But then it rose into a high-pitched, ragged scream. Human, female, terrified. I stopped, cold heart thudding. And just like that, the canyon went quiet again. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, waiting to hear it again. Nothing. Just wind brushing along the canyon walls and my own breath fogging in the late spring air. I called out, "Hello, is someone there?" But the canyon gave back nothing except my own voice bouncing down its spine. I jogged a little farther, uneasy now, but found no signs of another person. No backpacks, no trail shoes, no water bottles dropped in panic. Just sun-scorched rock and dry sand. Eventually, I convinced myself it was nothing. A bird cry warped by the acoustics. A heat mirage for the ears. The mind plays tricks when you're running alone, especially in places that feel this hollow. But the next weekend, it happened again. This time it was earlier in the run, just after the first sharp incline. I was in full stride, lungs burning in a satisfying way, when I heard it clearer now. A scream, not desperate, but sharp, sudden, almost angry, and closer than before. I stopped, pulled out my earbuds, and turned in a slow circle. Nothing. No dust clouds from someone running, no movement behind the brush. My GPS tracker showed no blip but me. It wasn't until my 4th or 5th run that I realized something else was happening, something harder to explain. I'd begun to hear footsteps. Not the echo of mine, but something behind me. Always a few paces back. If I stopped, the sound would stop. If I slowed, it would slow. It was so faint, I almost convinced myself it was a rhythm glitch in my brain. But then I heard breathing. Raspy, dry, like someone with sand in their lungs trying not to wheeze too loudly. I whipped around more than once, sure I'd catch someone trailing me, maybe a prankster, maybe worse, but I never saw anything. Nothing but sunlit canyon shadows and long stretches of silence. Eventually, I started carrying a GoPro on my chest, strapped, thinking maybe I'd catch a mountain lion or a stray dog following me. The camera always showed nothing unusual. Until one evening, I slowed the footage down. Frame by frame, just before I turned one of the final bends out of the canyon, a shadow flickered across the rock wall behind me. Fast, upright, two-legged, it was gone in a blink. But it had arms, long ones, and it moved like it was running. Just not the way people do. After that footage, I didn't run mile 19 for a while. Something about the shape in that frame, the way it moved, the angle of its limbs, just didn't sit right. It wasn't a hiker, that was for sure. And it wasn't an animal. No mountain lion runs upright on two legs, casting a shadow that long, that lean. It reminded me of an old VHS horror film where things move just a little too fast, a little too unnaturally, like a human marionette with invisible strings. But curiosity always wins, especially for people like me who need a reason to keep going. So I returned the following weekend. This time I brought 2 GoPros, one chest-mounted, one clipped to my hydration pack and facing backward. I started the loop like usual, pushing hard through the shale switchbacks, counting my steps, watching my breath. The canyon was quiet, warmer than usual. I didn't hear any screams this time. Just the crunch of my trail shoes against rock and my own pulse in my ears. About 3 miles and the forward-facing GoPro picked up movement again. I didn't notice it at first. It's hard to track while running, but when I reviewed the footage later, I saw the shadow appear, then disappear, then reappear, closer. On the live run, I began to feel it before I saw it. That prickling sensation along the base of your neck, like cold fingers just grazing the skin. The feeling of not being alone. I slowed to a walk, yanked out my earbuds, and listened. Footsteps behind me, perfectly synced with mine. When I stopped, they did too. When I started walking again, so did they. But always just behind the curve of the canyon wall, just out of sight. I whipped around, nothing. But the GoPro was still running. Then I heard the scream again. But this time, it wasn't ahead of me. It was right next to me. I turned and saw something at the edge of my vision just for a second. A blur of motion like a person sprinting flat out down the trail. I started to run not away, but forward down the canyon's bend, hoping to get to the open section where the walls widen. The canyon echoed with my footsteps, and something else too. A second rhythm heavier, faster. I didn't look back, but the backward-facing GoPro did. Later, when I watched the footage, I saw it something running behind me, not quite human. Long limbs, no shirt, skin pale and stretched too tight. Its face was wrong. Not distorted, not monstrous, but unfinished. Like it had too many teeth in the wrong places and no eyes where they should have been. And it was mimicking me, step for step, breath for breath. Then it did something I'll never forget. It smiled, not at the camera, at me, like it knew I'd be watching later. And just before the clip ended, it waved, not a frantic wave, a slow, careful one, like a friend saying, "See you next time." I never went back to mile 19 after that day. I tried once, got as far as the trailhead before my body locked up. My knees literally refused to move forward, like some primal part of me had drawn a hard line. I sat in the car for an hour, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white sweat soaking through my shirt despite the AC. The nightmares started not long after. Always the same dream, I'm running in the canyon, the sun hanging low, shadows stretching long. At first, it's peaceful, the rhythm, the breeze that's sacred quiet. But then, I hear the scream again, distant at first, then closer. Too close. I turn around and there it is. That thing. Same build, same stride, but its skin is tighter now, its features sharper, more human. More like me. Then I wake up, breathing heavy, drenched in sweat. Every time without fail, my watch logs a heart rate spike around 3:13 a.m. I deleted the footage eventually, wiped the cloud, trashed the SD cards, burned the old GoPro in a fire pit behind my apartment building. But sometimes, even now, when I'm running in other canyons, other trails, I'll catch the echo of another pair of feet behind me. Just for a second. And only once, I saw a shadow stretch next to mine on a ridgeline trail in Zion. Just barely there, matching my pace. Arms swinging in sync with mine. I didn't turn around, because I'm no longer sure that whatever I saw in mile 19 is still only in mile 19. And sometimes when I stare too long in the mirror after a run, I feel like my reflection is just a fraction too slow to smile back. Story 4. The Visitor Under the Porch. After I retired from the service, I bought a little place in the Arizona desert, half a mile off the paved road, 2 hours from the nearest town, and exactly the kind of silence I thought I needed. It was just me and my 2 dogs, Bear and Lulu, on a half-acre of red dust mesquite and sun-bleached porch boards. Most mornings I'd wake before dawn, make strong coffee, and sit outside while the dogs sniffed around the yard. By noon, the heat would settle in like a thick blanket, and we'd retreat indoors until dusk. For the first few months, it was peaceful, predictable, the kind of quiet you earn after years of noise and movement. I'd tinker in the shed, feed the dogs, fall asleep to the sound of cicadas and coyotes howling in the distance. Then the dogs started acting strange. It began with the porch. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I'd hear them growling low in their throats, not barking, just this deep, nervous rumble. Every time I checked, they were both standing near the front door, staring down at the slats in the floorboards. Not outside, not at the desert, underneath. I figured it was javelinas, maybe a stray coyote bedding down under the house. I got a flashlight crouched by the steps, shined it into the crawl space. Nothing, just dust and empty darkness. But the dogs kept at it. Same time every night, and each time they'd edge closer to the door, ears down, tails low. Lulu even refused to step onto the porch one morning. She sat by the doorway, staring into the slats, like she was listening for something. That's when I noticed the boards were scratched. Not chewed, scratched. From below, deep parallel grooves, like something with fingers. I tried to stay rational. The desert does strange things to your head, especially when you're out here alone with nothing but wind and silence. I told myself the scratches were old, maybe from a raccoon or feral cat. I even nailed in a few chicken wire panels around the base of the porch, thinking that would settle the matter. It didn't. That same night, Bear wouldn't stop pacing by the front door. He'd walk in circles, pause, sniff, then let out this low whimper that sent chills up my spine. Around 2:40 a.m., Lulu started growling again, this time louder, more insistent. I grabbed the flashlight and headed out. As I stepped onto the porch, I felt that wrongness in the air. The kind that makes the hairs on your arms stand up before your brain even knows why. The air was heavy still. No crickets, no wind. Just the creaking of old wood under my boots and the faint smell of copper like rusted metal or blood and water. I knelt by the boards and listened. Breathing. Not mine, not the dogs. A slow rasping exhale drawn out like someone trying to stay quiet while gasping for air. I backed away, heart racing, and went inside without looking again. The next morning, I checked the chicken wire. It had been peeled back, not chewed or torn. Peeled like something reached up from under the earth and wanted in. I set up my old trail cam just outside the porch, angled low-pointed at the crawl space. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the wood made my fists clench. Around 3:12 a.m., I heard something lightly tap on the floorboards beneath my bed, 3 slow knocks from below. The next day I checked the camera, The footage was grainy dust dancing in the floodlight's beam. For hours, nothing. Then around 3:08, something shifted. A hand long, fingers too long, with cracked nails reached out from under the porch, feeling along the dirt like it was searching. The wrist bent backward. Then the hand waved at the camera. Just once. Then it withdrew. I showed no one. Didn't upload it. Didn't save it. I deleted the clip and yanked the camera off its post. But that night, something new happened. It spoke from beneath the porch in a voice that wasn't mine, but sounded like someone I once knew. It said, "Hey, brother, it's cold out here. Let me in." But my brother's been dead for 8 years. I didn't move for a long time after hearing that voice. Just sat in the kitchen chair, hands clenched around a lukewarm mug of coffee, the dogs pressed against my legs, ears back and eyes wide. My brother Sam had died in Afghanistan. I'd been the one to answer the door when the men in uniform came. There was no mistaking that voice. The soft rasp, the slight Tennessee drawl that clung to our family blood like dust. It had come from under the house. I told myself it was a trick. Stress, sleep deprivation, PTSD looping its own reruns in my head. But even as I whispered those rationalizations to myself, I started locking every door, every window, as if something was already inside. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with a shotgun across my lap, both dogs silent tense. At 3:00 a.m., sharp, the knocking started again. But this time, it wasn't under the floor. It was coming from the back porch, the old one, the one I never used. The one with no steps, just a gap between the planks and the earth. Then the voice returned. "Open the door, man. It's me. It's Sam. I don't know why you locked me out." I stood slowly, breath shallow, and stepped toward the rear hallway. The dogs followed, but only halfway. They stopped and stared, whining softly. I flicked on the porch light. Nothing. So no movement, no shadow. Just that same silence. Then another voice. This one was mine. "You left me out here. It's cold and you locked the door. Why'd you leave me, man?" I dropped the shotgun. My knees buckled, but I didn't fall. I backed up, shaking heart, a war drum in my chest. Then the boards on the back porch creaked 1, 2, 3, slow and heavy. I ran to the front, grabbed my flashlight, and swung the door open, ready to bolt to the truck. And that's when I saw it. Crawling out from under the porch, something wearing my shape. It didn't move like me. It slid arms, 2 long knees, bending the wrong way. It had my boots, my jacket, even the same tear in the left sleeve. But its face, it was like looking into a mirror warped by heat. Everything was just slightly off. Eyes too wide, smile too flat, skin too pale like it had never felt sunlight. It tilted its head, studying me, then opened its mouth, but it didn't speak. It clicked a rapid chattering sound like bone tapping against bone. And then it grinned wider, impossibly wide teeth, lined up perfectly in rows that didn't end. It scrambled backward, slammed the door, and locked it. The dogs were howling now, pacing frantic. I ran to the hallway closet, pulled out a flare gun I hadn't touched in years, and fired it through the window. Red light bathed the yard, and in that brief moment of flickering fire, I saw it. 3 of them, all crouched beneath the porch, all wearing my face. And one of them, grinning up at me, was wearing Sam's dog tags. I don't remember falling asleep that night. I must have passed out from pure exhaustion, because when I opened my eyes, it was morning. Sunlight poured through the cracked blinds, and the dogs were curled beside me on the living room floor, silent, but still tense, eyes fixed on the front door, like they were waiting for something to knock again. I checked the porch. No sign of them. No tracks, no blood, no drag mark. The flare had scorched a blackened circle into the dirt, but otherwise, everything looked normal. Too normal. I packed a bag within the hour. Clothes, food, dog supplies, and the trail cam I'd ripped off the post. I didn't even bother cleaning up. Just locked the place from the inside, loaded Bear and Lulu into the truck, and drove until I ran out of gas in Flagstaff. I didn't look back once. I stayed with my cousin for a few weeks. Told her it was just desert fever, a bad scare, too much solitude. She didn't press, but even then, I knew I wasn't going back. I sold the house through a lawyer, never stepped foot on the property again. Now I live in a small rental on the edge of a busier town, lights on all night, neighbors on every side. There's concrete under my floorboards, and I make sure nothing can crawl beneath. But sometimes, when I walk past the window just after 3 a.m., I think I catch something just at the edge of the light. A hand too long, too familiar, reaching out from shadow. And somewhere deep in the dark, something whispers, "It's still cold out here, brother." Story 5. It sang in the ice caves. By the end of October, glacier season in Alaska winds down fast. The tourists vanish the road's ice over, and the ice caves begin to shift in ways even locals don't fully understand. I'd been guiding cave tours out near Mendenhall for 3 years, mostly small groups looking for Instagram shots, or thrill seekers wanting to say they'd stood inside a living glacier. It was good money if you didn't mind the cold and knew how to read the ice. That year, I was closing out the season with one last private tour. A young couple had booked it last minute, quiet, polite, not much for small talk. They said they were visiting from Portland and wanted a romantic send-off before winter really settled in. I met them at the ranger station just after sunrise. The skies were clear, the wind biting. Perfect conditions. We hiked out to the cave entrance in silence, the only sounds our boots crunching frost and the distant crackle of shifting ice. The woman held her partner's hand tightly, glancing often toward the mountains. She looked nervous, but I figured it was just the scale of it all. The glacier loomed like a frozen god, ancient and alive. I didn't know it yet, but that would be the last time I'd walk into those caves with someone else. The entrance to the ice cave was low and narrow, a gash in the glacier's side that shimmered blue in the early light. As we ducked inside, the air changed instantly, still heavy, colder than outside. Our headlamps flicked on and the couple let out soft gasps as the walls came alive in color. Blues, green streaks of white where ancient air was trapped in time. The sound of dripping water echoed all around, magnified by the frozen cathedral. I gave my usual safety rundown, pointed out the overhangs to avoid and the path to follow. They nodded along quietly, hands still clasped. About 30 feet in, I let them explore a bit while I hung back, giving them space. That's when I heard it. At first, I thought it was the ice groaning, that low, deep creaking glaciers make when they shift normal in these caves. But it didn't fade. It changed, became melodic, soft, gentle. Someone was singing. I froze. It wasn't the couple. I could still see their silhouettes ahead, standing beneath an archway, backs turned, unmoving. The voice echoed from deeper inside the cave, distant but clear. A woman's voice. The tune was slow, sad, almost like a lullaby. And it sounded familiar. My mother used to sing that song. I hadn't heard it since I was a child, since before she passed. I stood there, breath fogging in the beam of my headlamp, trying to remember the lyrics. The melody curled around the walls, bouncing off ice, weaving through the cold. Then it stopped. I called out to the couple, pretending I hadn't heard anything strange. They didn't respond. I walked toward them quickly. But when I reached the spot, they were gone. No footsteps, no voices. just an empty stretch of glowing tunnel and a faint echo still hanging in the air. Then just for a second, I heard the song again. This time it wasn't coming from deep in the glacier. It was right behind me. I spun around fast, nearly slipping on the slick ice beneath my boots. My headlamp beam sliced through the air, shaking with the movement, catching nothing but the wavering blue walls, and my own breath hanging like mist. The song had stopped again, cut clean, like it had never been there. But I knew I hadn't imagined it. I'd heard every note, every fragile word humming through the frozen air. It was my mother's voice, soft and low, like she used to sing when I was sick or couldn't sleep during storms. I called out for the couple louder this time, my voice cracking under the weight of my own breath. Nothing, just the steady drip of meltwater and the subtle groan of shifting ice somewhere deep within the glacier. I started walking faster, then jogging, following the main tunnel deeper. The walls seemed to narrow around me the farther I went. My headlamp caught glints of frost that looked like tiny eyes watching from the walls. Then I turned a bend and froze again. There was light up ahead. Not from me, not from the couple. From another headlamp flickering and faint. I rushed toward it, desperate to see them again, to make sense of what was happening. But as I approached, the beam began to sway, like it was dangling from a string. And when I reached the chamber, I found the woman's headlamp lying on the ice, still glowing, but no one around. The strangest part, no sign of struggle, no dropped backpack, no signs of panic. Just the headlamp and a long, strange smear in the frost, like something had been dragged, but there were no footsteps, no prints, nothing to say where they went. Then something moved behind me. I turned quickly and caught just the briefest glimpse, a silhouette slipping between ice pillars. It looked like a person, tall, thin, moving too smoothly. I shouted, ran after it. And then everything changed. I found myself standing at the cave entrance again, the tunnel behind me gone. Not just unfamiliar gone, like the cave had restructured itself when I wasn't looking. I was dizzy. My watch was frozen on the time. I stepped outside and squinted against the white sunlight. There were fresh prints in the snow. Mine, I assumed, but there were 3 sets. 2 of them walked into the cave. 3 walked out. I got back to the ranger station, numb and half frozen, muttering something about the couple getting separated. A team went out to search, but the trail cameras at the cave showed nothing after we entered. They combed the glacier for 2 days and found no trace, no gear, no bodies. Just my boot prints, they said. I took leave after that. Then I quit, but it didn't end there. Because 2 months later, I got an email. No sender, no subject, just a video attachment named Tour MP4. I almost didn't open it, but I did. The video showed a cave tour, shot on a GoPro one I never owned. The footage moved smoothly, panning across the glowing walls, steady and confident. It showed a guide in front wearing my coat, my gloves, my gait. And behind him, 2 guests I didn't recognize. New faces, but the voice narrating at the beginning was mine. Calm, professional, just like always. Welcome to the last tour of the season. I stared at that video for a long time, watching myself move through the cave with strangers I'd never met, guiding them with the same gestures, the same words I'd used 100 times before. Except I hadn't recorded it. I hadn't been there. I hadn't gone back. And yet there I was. I deleted the file. Or at least I thought I did. It kept coming back, showing up in different folders, sometimes renamed, sometimes with the timestamp updated. One time I opened it and found the audio replaced. No narration, just that same haunting lullaby echoing faintly through the frozen air. It's been over a year since the last tour. I moved away from Alaska, took a desk job at a parks office in Colorado. No caves, no ice, no missing people. I don't talk about what happened. Nobody asks. But every so often, just before sleep, I hear that song again. Not from a memory, not from a dream, but from somewhere else. Quiet at first, then clearer. Always the same melody my mother used to hum. Last week, I received a small padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a USB stick, and on it, another video, another tour. This time the guide looks even more like me. Same voice, same smile. But his eyes don't blink, and near the end of the footage, the camera lingers on a stretch of untouched ice. Until the ice shifts, and something underneath begins to sing. So now I sleep with the lights on. I check the closet twice, and I keep the windows locked even though I live on the 3rd floor. Because sometimes when the night is cold enough, I swear I can hear the glacier calling me back. Softly, patiently, singing my name, singing my... Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If these stories sent chills down your spine, don't keep the fear to yourself. Leave a comment, smash that like button, and share this video with someone who dares to listen in the dark. We release terrifying true stories every week, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what's lurking in the shadows. This is High Scare Stories, where nightmares don't end when the video does. Until next time, stay safe and stay scared.